Good morning, everybody. We are back with the part 2 of joint mobilization. In the previous part, we learned about what is joint mobilization. Why do we need to learn about joint mobilization? We learned about various types of joint mobilization like auto mobilization, muscle energy technique, MWM, and so on. We also learned about types of arthrokinematics motions like rolling, spinning, gliding. What are they? What is distraction? What is compression? We learned about types of joint shapes. We learned about ovoid, saddle. We learned about convex, concave. So now we will start with the new part of joint mobilization. So any joint mobilization technique, if you wish to give on a patient, you need to learn about a very important rule, which is convex concave and concave convex rule. What is the difference between the two rules is, when we say convex concave, that means on the convex bone is moving on a concave surface. And when we talk about concave convex rule, which means that a concave surface is moving on a stable convex rule. Okay, please understand this. When we ask in exam also define convex concave, you can tell both the parts of the rule, when convex is moving and when concave is moving. So don't get confused. So this rule is very important if you really want to apply mobilization techniques correctly on the joint. So let us start with convex concave, which means when a convex surface is moving on a stable concave surface. That will happen, for example, in a shoulder joint. So when you are doing shoulder abduction or shoulder external or internal rotation, the head of the humerus is a convex surface which is moving over a stable concave surface, which is the glenoid cavity. So now let's take an example of shoulder abduction where the convex head of the humerus is moving on a stable concave glenoid cavity. So now let me remind you that rolling and sliding should be understood in a convex concave or a concave convex rule. Whenever we have to find about the direction of slide, we need to first find about where is the direction of rolling happening. So you understand that whenever a joint is moving, a bone is moving, within the joint both rolling and sliding happens. But which direction we don't know. Whether it is superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, that we don't know. Through this rule, we can find out which direction rolling is happening and which direction sliding is happening. So during a shoulder abduction, just visualize when you're doing abduction, the humerus bone is also going up, which means in the superior direction. Rolling is always in the direction of the moving bone. Wherever it is moving, that is the direction of the moving bone. If the bone is going downwards, the rolling becomes inferior. If the bone is going superior, the rolling becomes superior. So during abduction, the humerus is going superiorly. That means that rolling is in the superior direction during abduction of shoulder. Now we'll understand in which direction sliding is happening. So we are talking about convex concave rule where convex is moving. So when a convex surface moves over concave, the slide happens in opposite direction to that of rolling. Okay. So in the abduction, rolling was in superior direction. So sliding happens in the inferior direction. So that is how we understood that inferior glide is required to complete a range of motion during abduction. which means that if a patient has reduced range of motion in abduction, so if you give inferior glide, you can improve the range of motion for that patient. Now similarly, if we talk about hip joint, same thing happens in hip joint also, because the joint is same, ball and socket joint. Head of the femur is also convex and the acetabulum cavity is concave shaped. So when you are doing abduction, the femur is going in superior direction, that means the roll is in the superior direction and the glide is the inferior direction. So if you want to correct abduction range of motion in a hip joint, you will have to give inferior glide to increase the range of motion. So that was the importance to understand convex-concave rule. Now let us understand what is concave-convex rule. So when we talk about concave-convex rule, which means that concave is moving over a convex stable surface. That can happen in your knee joint. When you are sitting on a chair and you are doing knee flexion and extension, that time tibia, which has a concave surface, is moving on the convex surface of the distal end of the femur. So whenever you are doing knee flexion extension, tibia is moving over femur, you need to apply concave-convex rule. So imagine yourself sitting on a chair and you are doing knee extension. So this time the tibia is going anteriorly. The bone is going anteriorly. So roll is in the direction of the moving bone, which means when tibia is going anteriorly, the roll is also in the anterior direction. Now this is a concave-convex rule because a concave surface is moving on convex surface. So the rolling and sliding is in the same direction. In the previous rule we understood that the rolling and sliding happens in the opposite direction. But when a concave moves over a convex surface, the roll and slide happens in the same direction, which means during extension of knee, when the tibia is moving over the femur, the roll is in the anterior direction and the slide is also in the anterior direction. Now when we do knee flexion in high sitting position, the tibia is going in the posterior direction, which means the rolling is happening in the posterior direction. Since it's a concave-convex rule, the sliding is also happening in the posterior direction. So this is important because if you want to mobilize knee joint with respect to tibia moving on knee, you need to use these particular glides. If it's knee extension which is restricted, you should give anterior glide. If it is knee flexion which is restricted, you should give a posterior glide to improve the range of motion. So I hope this rule is clear. Any further clarifications or examples we can discuss in the practical session. So this is just to summarize that in the convex-concave rule, convex joint slides in the opposite direction to that of the bone movement and concave surface is stable here. So if convex surface moves on a stationary concave surface, gliding and rolling happens in the opposite direction. So now coming to effects of joint mobilization. What does this joint mobilization do? So the first effect is neurophysiological effects. It helps in reducing the pain. It helps in increasing the awareness of position and motion sense of afferent nerve impulses. Next, nutritional effects. So the movements like distraction and compression, they help in causing the synovial fluid movement. Due to this compression distraction movement, this helps in improving the nutrient exchange, which would have reduced in the case of swelling and joint immobilization. So these small techniques like compression and distraction are really helpful in improving the nutrition to the joint. Next, we have the mechanical effects. This helps in improving the mobility of the hypomobile joints. So in the previous module, we learned that joint mobilization helps in loosening or breaking the adhesions which could have formed during the immobilization. Now, what is this immobilization we keep talking about? It can be in a fracture case when there is a POP application, plaster cast has been applied for good 4 to 6 weeks, and if it's lower limb, it goes till 12 weeks also. So such a long period causes adhesions formation. It causes thickening of the connective tissue. So this reduces the range of motion. So this causes the stiffness in the joint. So mobilization helps in breaking these adhesions, help in loosening the tightened structures, and thus improving the range of motion. It also helps in maintaining the extensibility, which means the flexibility of the structures, and the tensile strength of the articular tissues. So sometimes when we are giving mobilization, and especially during manipulation technique, the last grade of mobilization is known as manipulation, which is a thrust technique. During that time, you will also hear a cracking noise. That means you have broken some adhesions, you have loosened some structure, which is why you have heard a cracking noise. So these are the effects of joint mobilization. Now coming to contraindications for mobilization, which means that you are not supposed to give mobilization during certain conditions, such as inflammatory arthritis, malignancy, tuberculosis, osteoporosis. Osteoporosis, the bones are already weakened. So if you really want to, or if you really have to give mobilization in an osteoporotic bone, you need to give the least grades, which is grade 1 and grade 2. Otherwise, grade 3 and grade 4 can probably injure the patient. In case of a ligamentous rupture, any tissue which is torn, any tissue which is ruptured, you should not give mobilization, because those tissues needs immobilization. They need immobilization to heal. If you give mobilization, the tissue will not heal at all, isn't it? If you have an injury, what do? You don't keep touching the tissue. You leave it so that it heals on its own. Similarly, if there is an injury, as in when there's a tear of a tissue, or there's a fracture, when you need the structure to be immobilized so that it can heal faster, in those cases, you're not supposed to give mobilization at all. Herniated disc with nerve compression. Now this is little tricky. It depends on patient to patient. Some patient feels very good when you give mobilization, they are better. So it depends on what type of patient you have. Next, any bone disease where you can suspect of while giving a mobilization, maybe you can break the bone. In those cases, you are not supposed to give. Neurological involvement, any congenital bone deformities, vascular disorders, joint effusion. So joint effusion is not an absolute contraindication again. You can give mobilization in a joint effusion, and you should give, but grade 1 and grade 2, so as to release the pain. And we will understand what is grade 1, grade 2 in the subsequent slides. So these are the contraindications for mobilization. Now coming to precautions, where you can give mobilization, but be careful. In cases like osteoarthritis, pregnancy, total joint replacement, severe scoliosis, poor general health, and patient's inability to relax. So with taking precautions, you can give mobilization in these conditions. So now we will learn about the grading scale of Maitland joint mobilization. So as we have been discussing that there are 5 grades of joint mobilization. So let us talk about what is grade and what is it dependent upon. So grading based on amplitude of movement and where within available range of motion the force should be applied, which means the amplitude of how much you are giving force and pressure, on that it depends, and exactly in which range of motion you are applying these glides. These two things should be learned before you are applying any type of grades. So talking about grade 1 mobilization, it is small amplitude rhythmic oscillating movement which should be given at the beginning of the range of motion. It's beautifully told by Maitland in his book that the amount of force and pressure which you give in grade 1 is something like, just imagine that there is a fly sitting on a table, and you keep your thumb over the fly and so much pressure you apply that the fly doesn't die. That much amount of pressure, just kind of touching and then moving up and down, the amplitude which we are talking, the oscillating movement which we are talking, like a spring movement, you go little up, come down, but you don't kill the fly. That much amount of force and pressure when you apply, that is known as grade 1. So it is small amplitude rhythmic oscillating movement at the beginning of range of motion is grade 1. So these terms, every term is important. If we ask what is grade 1, you cannot say small amplitude. You have to complete the sentence. Small amplitude, rhythmic oscillating, which is beginning at the range of motion. So these are 3 points you have to remember. Grade 1 helps in reducing pain and spasm. Now coming to grade 2. Grade 2 is large amplitude. Large amplitude rhythmic oscillating movement within the mid-range of the movement. You start from the beginning and you reach the mid-range of the movement. That much is known as grade 2. This also helps in reducing pain and spasm. Now, these grade 1 and grade 2, when you're giving a joint mobilization, you can give to reduce pain. You can start your treatment by giving grade 1 and grade 2, and then you can end your treatment by giving grade 3 and grade 4. Grade 3 and grade 4 are given if you want to increase the range of motion only. If you want to reduce the stiffness of the joint. Grade 1 and grade 2 are given only if you want to reduce the pain. Now coming to grade 3 mobilization. These are again the large amplitude rhythmic oscillating movement up to point of limitation in range of movement. I will show you a figure which will come in the next slide so that you can understand what is exactly 1, 2, 3, where we are going to give it. So grade 3 is again large amplitude oscillating movement. You are supposed to give this grade 3 till you come to a resistance in a joint. Till you come to a resistance in the range of motion. This grade is given to increase the range of motion. It helps in stretching the capsule and the connective tissue structures. Grade 4 is again a small amplitude rhythmic oscillating movement which is given at the end range of movement and pushing into the resistance. It is used to gain range of motion within the joint. Now coming to grade 5, the thrust technique. It is again small amplitude, quick thrust at end range of motion. It is often accompanied by a popping sound which is known as the manipulation. And it is fast. The force is fast, the velocity is fast, and it requires a certification course and training. So this is the figure I was talking about. Just see the line in the center, the resistance line. So this is the resistance which the patient has in his range of motion. The first grade is you start giving glide, but you're not reaching the resistance of the patient. That means when you're giving the glide, you are going very smoothly. You're not feeling any resistance. That is grade 1. Grade 2 is the amplitude is large. You can see the arrow, the grade 2 arrow. The amplitude is large now. And you are just touching the resistance and coming back. You touch and come back. You're going down, you're coming back. You're not going into the resistance at all. Coming to grade 3, you start at the resistance. It is large amplitude again, and then you are going into the limit of resistance. Grade 4 is again small amplitude. You begin at the resistance and you push into the resistance. You are moving ahead of the resistance. That is grade 4. Now we'll talk about the indications for mobilization. Grade 1 and grade 2 are used for reducing pain. Pain must be treated prior to stiffness. If patient has pain and stiffness both, you should first reduce the pain by giving grade 1 and grade 2. Small amplitude oscillations stimulate the mechanoreceptors and limit the pain perception. Grade 3 and grade 4 are primarily used to increase the range of motion. They help in reducing the stiffness or reducing the hypermobility of the joint, and it should be given 3 to 4 times per week. You should also accompany mobilization technique with the suitable exercises. Now, before giving your treatment, what all points you should take care of? Point number 1, if limited or painful range of motion, examine and decide which tissues are limiting the function. That means whether it is joint which is the actual cause, whether the muscles are tight, whether the capsule is limited. So you need to find out which structures are limiting the function. Determine whether treatment will be directly primarily towards relieving pain or stretching a joint or soft tissue limitation. So you need to find out whether you should relieve the pain or you should stretch the tightened structure. Quality of pain when testing range of motion helps determine stage of recovery and dosage of techniques. So the amount of pain patient has, that will help you in understanding what stage patient is in. In an acute stage, the pain can be a lot. The pain will be severe, acute cases. So in those cases, you can decide your grades like grade 1 and grade 2. But if it's a chronic case and pain is less and range of motion is more restricted, in those cases you can give grade 3 and grade 4, because here the priority is to increase range of motion. You need to decide whether you want to increase range of motion primarily or decrease pain primarily. According to that, your grades will change. If pain is experienced before tissue limitation, gentle pain inhibiting joint techniques may be used. If pain is experienced concurrently with tissue limitation, example, pain and limitation that occur when damaged tissue begins to heal, the limitation is treated cautiously and gentle stretching techniques can be used. So depending upon the case you are seeing, depending upon the requirement of the patient. If pain is experienced after tissue limitation is met because of stretching a tight capsular tissue, the joint can be stretched aggressively. So these are the 3 cases. Depending on when you get the pain, depending on when patient experiences the pain, you can modify your treatment plan. Now, there are certain definitions of joint position. The first one is resting position. A resting joint position is something where there is maximum joint play. The capsule and the ligaments are relaxed. This position can be used for evaluating and treating a hypermobile joint. Because the structures are relaxed, you can nicely give mobilization technique. A loose pack position is when the articular surfaces are maximally separated. That means the contact between the two joint surfaces is very low. In this position, there will be maximum joint play. This position can be used for traction and mobilization both. Very good position to do mobilization and traction both. A close pack position is a position where the joint surfaces are in maximal contact with each other. And this is a position where you cannot give joint mobilization. To give a joint mobilization, you have to either place the joint in a resting position or in a loose pack position, depending upon which condition and on which joint you are giving mobilization technique. Now, joint mobilization application. So these are the points you are supposed to remember always. All joint mobilization techniques, Maitland joint mobilization techniques, follow convex-concave or concave-convex rule. Before giving joint mobilization, you need to apply this rule and you need to find out which glide or slide you're going to give on the patient. The second point is relaxation of the patient is very important. If a patient is not relaxed, the structures like ligaments, the joints, the muscles will be very tightened and you cannot give mobilization easily. So before that, you have to explain the procedure and you need to gain confidence of the patient so that he gets relaxed. You explain the purpose of the treatment, why you are giving this technique, what is the need of this technique and how will it help the patient. After this, you evaluate before and after the treatment. So first, any treatment technique, you need to evaluate the baseline measurement. How is the patient before, so that you can find out how is he after the treatment. Same thing we learned in goniometry also. You need to have pre and post data with you. Stop the treatment if it is too painful for the patient. Use proper body mechanics. So whenever as a therapist you're giving a technique, so this is manual therapy technique, you are not using a modality. So that is why your joint, your body mechanics should be correct. Otherwise, you will end up getting pain in your back or neck. Begin and end treatment with grade 1 and grade 2 oscillations. So whenever you start with joint mobilization, start with grade 1, grade 2 so that you reduced any type of pain which is there in the joint. Next, positioning and stabilization. Patient and extremity should be positioned so that the patient can relax. These points are very important. Initial mobilization is performed in a loose pack position. In some cases, the position to use is the one in which the joint is least painful. So sometimes we cannot keep the patient's joint in a loose pack position. Probably we have to find out a position where there is least pain in the joint. So depending on the patient, we can modify this. Firmly and comfortably stabilize one joint segment. Usually the proximal bone should be stabilized either with the hand of the therapist or using a belt which is known as a mobilization belt, or if you don't have that and you need to use both your hands, you can offer help from an assistant also. Prevent unwanted stress and makes the stretch form more specific and effective. If you stabilize and position the extremity and the patient, your mobilization will be very effective. Now, treatment force and direction of movement. The treatment force is applied as close to the opposing joint surface as possible. You should be as close to a joint as possible. The larger the contact surface is, the more comfortable the procedure will be. So if you're giving mobilization for a joint like a shoulder, you should not give the mobilization with your thumb or finger, because small surface area contact will hurt the patient. You should use a larger surface area like your palm. Then the direction of movement during treatment is either parallel or perpendicular to the treatment plane. Now the direction of the glide you should understand in the following figure. So the treatment direction. The treatment plane, so see this figure carefully. The treatment plane lies on the concave articulating surface perpendicular to a line from the center of the convex surface. That is known as the treatment surface. So just see the other arrow, the glide one. You are giving the glide perpendicular to the convex surface, or you can also say that you are giving the glide parallel to the treatment plane. Either ways is correct. If you find easier that I am giving glide perpendicular to the convex surface, that is also right. If you understand the treatment plane, then you are giving glide parallel to the treatment plane. So this is the direction of the glide. Now coming to traction, if we talk about in terms of treatment plane, the traction is perpendicular to the treatment plane. So the joint traction techniques are applied perpendicular to the treatment plane, where the entire bone is moved so that the joint surfaces are separated. That is known as traction. So let us summarize what we learned so far. Gliding techniques are applied parallel to the treatment plane or perpendicular to the convex or the moving surface. Glide is in the direction in which the slide would normally occur for the desired motion. Direction of sliding is easily determined by using convex-concave or concave-convex rule. The entire bone is moved so that there is gliding of one joint surface on the other. If gliding is restricted, direction is also painful. Begin gliding mobilizations in the painless direction, then progress to gliding in restricted direction, which is not painful. What this means is, if you have 2 to 3 movements which are painful, so you start with those glides in those directions where the movement is less painful. The least painful movement should be done at the last. Re-evaluate the joint response the next day or have the patient report at the next visit. If increased pain, reduce amplitude of oscillations. So sometimes mobilization technique will give soreness to a patient, which you need to tell to the patient prior, and for that you have to advise the patient to use cryotherapy. Maybe every 2 to 3 hours he should apply for 10 minutes cryotherapy. But if the pain is very bad, that means maybe your dosage is a lot. You should reduce the number of oscillations. If joint is same or better, perform either of the following, which is repeat the same maneuver if goal is to maintain joint play. Progress to sustain grade 3 traction or glides if the goal is to increase joint play. So depending upon what is your goal, you can modify your grades. Now coming to dosage, the joint mobilization session usually involve 3 to 6 sets of oscillation. You need to give 2 to 3 oscillations per second, lasting for at least 60 seconds for tightness, 1 to 2 minutes for pain. Apply smooth and regular oscillations. So this is the dosage for mobilization. So 3 to 6 set of oscillations, and it should go for 60 seconds. Coming to patient response, what you can expect. They may have soreness. Perform joint mobilization on alternate days to allow soreness to decrease and tissue healing to occur. So if you think that patient has lot of soreness even after cryotherapy, you can schedule your treatment on alternate days. To reduce this soreness, patient should perform range of motion exercises. Patient's joint range of motion should be reassessed before and after the treatment. Pain is always the guide. Pain will tell you whether you are going too fast in your treatment or you're going too slow in your treatment. So pain is always the guide. So I hope this session part 2 on Maitland's mobilization, which is the final part of joint mobilization Maitland technique, is over. Any further doubts and clarifications will be dealt in the practical sessions. Kindly go to the PPT well, and you can refer Carolyn Kistner for further details. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll see you next week. Thank you.